This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library of
You can get the Truefire All Access Pass for as cheap as they ever do it, the $99 thing. So just jump and do that if you're looking for the best price you can get Truefire All Access for.
If I'm honest with you, one of the things I've always felt a little bit stupid and a little bit self-conscious about is the amount of gain that I like to use. And I think this stems from a few things. So like back in the day, I would read a few things. I think even, you know, like in metal bands or in Mesa Boogie manuals, and there'd be like advice in there like, you know, don't turn the gain knob all the way up, or you might need less gain than you think. And I looking back, I kind of feel like the more recent advice that I've seen from MISHA MANSOOR is use as much gain as is necessary for you to play the part or for you to execute that part that you see fit. But I wanted to explain in this video kind of where some of this has come from, why it ends up being that I myself, like if I'm using a Tubescreamer, oftentimes might have that gain all the way up, which is unusual on a Tubescreamer, right? The first thing to say is that if you look at this pedal here, depending on what type of guitar you're using, you're going to be hitting the front end of your signal chain with completely variable gain. So if I hit this with a Les Paul, it basically gets all the way up to the meter. And with a Strat, I can get like a 66% of the way up there. And different pickups as well will get to different parts of the meter. So it's worth saying that potentially the people that have been giving you advice to use less gain, they're in often cases, particularly if they're coming from the metal scene, coming from a scenario where they're already hitting their pickups potentially up to like twice as hard as you, or hitting the front of their signal chain, because this guitar has like a lot of dirty blondes which are set really low. So this is actually a really pretty low output guitar. So that's kind of point one, is like the people that are giving you some of this advice, what is their rig? Is it anything like yours? That's kind of question one. The second thing is, are they actually going into a clean amp? Now I see this all the time when people demonstrate their clean tone, and I'm like, that is the opposite of clean for me. So for me, when I say clean, this is even maybe like a little bit, there might be a tiny bit on that of hair, but I really do generally mean like clean. Like if you dig in, it's still a clean tone. The reason for that is that that's kind of, growing up I used to have multi-channel amplifiers, and I'd have a clean and I'd have a drive. And so that's kind of the other thing here. Like if you're going into an edge of the breakup tone or even a crunchy tone, then I think, of course and obviously, pedals aren't necessarily going to need to have gain on them. So I think there's two things to bear in mind with a drive pedal in general, and one is the clipping element of it, so how much drive is it actually adding, and then two is how much is it boosting the signal. And there's quite an interesting interplay between those two things. So for me, when I'm playing just clean, I need to introduce clipping as well as boosting, or maybe even like the clipping is more important than the boosting, because I'm not looking for it to just get louder when I kick on a pedal. I'm actually looking for it to give me drive and overdrive. So that is a real key difference, I think, between how some folks like Rhett Scholl and the Studio Rats tend to be building their tones around an already driven tone. And I think that's an important distinction as to how you might run your pedals. So for instance, this is a 12 dB boost. And mostly it's getting louder, right? Rather than... So it's not actually giving me like that drive and that feel that I want. Now, conversely, if you imagine you had a Tubescreamer on already, and this might be something like, I don't know, you've already got your drive amp. Now if you kick on a boost, it actually really successfully takes you into that kind of squishier drive territory that you're maybe looking for. And so I think that's an important thing as well, because if you're like me and you've got a clean amp, then actually what you're doing by kicking on a drive pedal in some cases is just getting it basically to the territory that some of these other guys are already running their amps at. Like they're already running with significant chunks of gain or clipping, and so you need to get even level with them. You might be like halfway up on a Tubescreamer, right? Like that could be edge of breakup for some people, and then if I kick on a plus 12 dB boost, okay, and then the other thing around that is like this idea of stacking pedals, which typically for me, I've tried to get the tone I'm looking for with just one pedal, in which case, like, drive all the way up on a Tubescreamer. Like, that's not excessive levels of gain to me at all with this particular setup, right? And again, I can boost the level on this. And yeah, like I say, if I swap guitars here though, it's going to be a different gain. And then suddenly I might be thinking, actually, do I need anywhere near? So I think that's kind of just demonstrating for me how sensitive all of this stuff really is to you, your setup and your style of playing. And like, you know, if people ask me why you're using so much gain, bro, it's I don't necessarily play like you. Like, depending on the part, this might be exactly what I need, or I might even need more gain than this. Especially like legato stuff. And another thing to point out really is like there's this kind of idea I think that some people, it's all about feel as well. So for me, I actually really like that feel of squishiness. Whereas I think some people are looking for a tighter response, which for me, I'm looking for that thing where it's kind of... where it's kind of got sag to it, and I think that's another thing that's really personal. So, you know, when I look in the Mesa Boogie dual rectifier or whatever manual, it kind of says for tighter tones, you want to keep that gain like below 3 on the amp. Whereas actually, I think I really like it when the amp is sort of struggling a bit, or seems like it's struggling, and there's like a bit more fur around the edges, like a softer kind of feel, more compressed, squishy feel to it. And I think that's okay as well. So I think, yeah. Another thing to say is that, to some extent, all pedals are a little bit different as well. So, you know, when a Tubescreamer with the gain all the way up and the level all the way up, it kind of looks a bit crazy. But then actually you think about, like, compared to some other pedals, like, the Tubescreamer really doesn't boost much at all in terms of volume versus something like a J-Rocket the Dude. So it's kind of, you can't really judge too hard, I don't think, from what you can see like on a gain pedal. So I felt stupid about it. I think actually listening to MISHA MANSOOR on this as well, it's kind of like, look, it's okay. It's okay if you want to run that drive pedal all the way up. If you're using a Tubescreamer, it's going to be kind of like, you know, it's nowhere near the levels of gain as something like a Marshall Governor, Sir Riot, a Boss DS1, a Boss Blues Driver. You know, like all of these pedals are subtly kind of different. And, you know, something that looks weird might not always be as weird as you think. Like, I don't know, that's kind of my take on it, and trying to make myself feel okay about using quite a lot of gain sometimes. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Again, for me as well, something like a noise gate live, it helps me to play with this stuff. But I do think it's worth maybe experimenting with what happens if you do turn the gain back down further, and just thinking, well, is that actually better for the part as well? So don't just be like me, like all gain all the time type affair, but experiment with like levels of gain. This is one of the things that I kind of find a bit tricky live, where it's like you sometimes want more gain for a part, you sometimes want a bit less. And that's one of the things, like with a modeler, where you kind of sort of a little bit fixed in some regards, and you can kind of mitigate this in the real world with like a few kind of gain pedals stacked. But just remembering that, you know, the level boosting, the level of clipping of each pedal, where your amp at, this is a whole ecosystem of stuff which really kind of, it's totally different for everyone else. You know, how high are your pickups, how high is the output of these, what's the gain like on your amp, is it clipping or is it totally clean, how many other pedals have you got in your signal chain, do you run a compressor in there which is doing things as well. Another thing to try here actually, I think, is experimenting with have a drive pedal before your compressor. I think that does some really interesting things as well. So there's lots to think about, but I think just don't feel too dismayed if you're like me and you're like I like to use these pedals with the gain all the way up. I think it's okay, probably. MISHA says it's okay.